Hey guys, we begin with something brutal yet essential. The Roman Empire, but not as you imagine it. No grand colosseums or powerful emperors in purple robes. This time, you'll be just you. An ordinary person living among legionaries, slaves, and patricians in the streets of ancient Rome. So before you get comfortable, like the video and subscribe if this truly speaks to you. Now, adjust your light, take a deep breath, and let's cross the centuries together. You wake to darkness, the kind that feels thick and substantial. For a moment, you forget where and when you are. Your back aches against the thin straw mattress, laid directly on wooden planks. The smell hits you next, a peculiar mixture of damp stone, human bodies, and the faint scent of yesterday's garlic and fish sauce that seems to have soaked into everything. It's not your bedroom. It's not your century. You're in an insula, a Roman apartment building. And it's the early hours before dawn in the heart of ancient Rome. The year is 120 CE, during Emperor Hadrian's rule, and you're about to discover why your modern sensibilities are woefully unprepared for what comes next. The wooden shutters of your small room filter thin strips of approaching dawn. You're on the third floor of a 6-story building, a precarious structure of brick, timber, and concrete that sways slightly when strong winds blow. The wealthy live in ground-floor apartments or private domus houses. You, like most ordinary Romans, are stacked above them in increasingly cramped and dangerous conditions. Your room, a single chamber, roughly 12 feet square, is your entire living space. No bathroom, no kitchen, just 4 walls, a door with a simple latch that wouldn't keep out a determined child, and those wooden shutters. You share this insula with nearly 200 other residents, all packed into similar single rooms, entire families often sharing spaces smaller than modern prison cells. A baby cries somewhere above you. Footsteps creak across wooden floors. A couple argues in hushed but intense tones through the paper-thin wall beside you. Privacy is a luxury you've already realized doesn't exist here. You sit up, and your head nearly touches the ceiling. The air feels close, stale. Summer is approaching, and in the higher floors, heat rises and collects like an invisible weight. In winter, it's the opposite problem. Bone-chilling cold seeps through every crack. There's no heating besides a small brazier which you'd never dare light inside this wooden tinderbox of a building. You need to relieve yourself, but there's no toilet in your room. Instead, you find a chamber pot under your bed. This you'll eventually empty into a larger waste receptacle downstairs, or if you're feeling particularly bold or lazy, you might just empty it out the window like many of your neighbors, and action that contributes to the perpetual stench of Roman streets. Suddenly a shout breaks through the pre-dawn murmurs. Aqua! Aqua! A water seller is making his early rounds, carrying buckets hung from a yoke across his shoulders. If you want water today, you'll need to bring your clay jug down to purchase some. Public fountains exist, but they're often crowded, and the nearest one is 6 blocks away. Most insulae don't have running water above the ground floor. If you miss the water seller now, you might go thirsty until evening. You dress quickly, pulling on a simple tunic, a single piece of rectangular cloth, folded and sewn with openings for your head and arms. If you're male, it reaches to your knees. If female, to your ankles. This is your undergarment and main clothing in one. Over this, if you're trying to appear respectable, you might don a toga for men or stola for women, but these are cumbersome garments requiring constant adjustment. Most working Romans wear just the tunic for daily activities. You slip on leather sandals, simple affairs with thongs that wrap around your ankles. They're already giving you blisters, and you realize why Romans developed such elaborate foot care, routines, and why foot washing was both a necessity and sometimes a ceremonial act. You grab your clay jug and make your way down the narrow, winding stairs. They're steep, uneven, and in the dim light, positively treacherous. There are no railings. Several tenants have fallen to their deaths on these very steps. You place each foot with deliberate care. The stairwell smells worse than your room, a mixture of urine, rotting food, and the indefinable odor of too many humans living in too small a space. Someone has vomited in the corner of the second-floor landing. You step around it carefully. As you reach the ground floor, the first impactful moment of your day occurs. You step outside into the streets of Rome at dawn, and it's nothing like the marble-gleaming fantasy you've been led to expect. The street is narrow, perhaps 12 feet across, and already buzzing with activity despite the early hour. It's also filthy. Horse dung, human waste, rotting food, and indefinable sludge form a putrid carpet that you have no choice but to walk through. Your sandals offer minimal protection, and you feel moisture seeping between your toes. You will never feel truly clean again. The buildings loom 5 and 6 stories high on either side, creating a canyon that blocks most sunlight. The street becomes a shadowy corridor, even at midday. Now, in the early dawn, it's a dark tunnel punctuated by oil lamps and torches carried by early risers. A donkey brays and nearly knocks you over, its panniers loaded with vegetables bound for the market. Its driver curses you in Latin too rapid and colloquial for your classical education to comprehend. You press yourself against a wall to let them pass, feeling the rough brick scrape against your back. The water cellar is at the corner, surrounded by a small crowd of jug-bearing residents. You join the throng, quickly learning the second lesson of Roman life. Everything involves waiting in line and jostling for position. There's no concept of orderly queuing. The strongest and most assertive get served first. An elbow jabs into your ribs. Someone's foot stomps painfully on yours. You fight your way forward with growing desperation, your empty water jug clutched to your chest like a shield. When you finally reach the front, the seller barks a price. Dupondius. You fumble with unfamiliar coins. Roman currency is complex. Gold ore, silver denarii, brass sesterces, copper asses, and dupondia. The water costs 2 dupondii, about a quarter of what an average labourer might earn in a day. Water, you're learning, is not cheap in ancient Rome, despite the famed aqueducts. Transaction complete, you now carry a heavy jug of water back toward your insula. The streets are growing more crowded by the minute. Shopkeepers are removing the heavy wooden shutters from their tabernae shops, which occupy the ground floors of most buildings. Food vendors set up portable stalls, filling the air with the smell of baking bread, sizzling sausages, and fish sauce, the ubiquitous garum that Romans put on everything. The second impactful moment strikes you as you navigate back through the awakening city. A sudden awareness of the rigid social hierarchy playing out all around you. A litter appears, carried by 6 muscular slaves. Inside reclines a patrician man wearing a blindingly white toga with a purple stripe, a senator perhaps, or at least a member of the equestrian class. Pedestrians scramble to clear a path. Those who don't move quickly enough receive blows from the staffs carried by slaves walking ahead of the litter. You press yourself into a doorway, trying to become invisible. Behind the litter walks a group of men in togas of varying quality. These are the senator's clients, free men of lesser status who have attached themselves to his patronage for protection, opportunity, and sometimes a daily sportula handout. They'll follow him to the forum, attend to his business, vote as he directs in public assemblies, and generally serve as his public display of influence. You've read about the client-patron relationship in history books, but seeing it enacted before you brings home the essential nature of Roman society. Everyone has their place in an elaborate web of obligation, deference, and protection. Independence, as you understand it, doesn't exist here. As the entourage passes, you notice people in various styles of dress, each signifying something about their status. The quality of fabric, the colors, the presence or absence of certain decorative elements all speak volumes to those who can read the visual language. You, in your hastily acquired simple tunic, probably look like a slave or a very poor free person. Speaking of slaves, they're everywhere, indistinguishable from free people, except sometimes by their behavior or manner of dress. That young man carrying packages for the wealthy matron, slave, the person minding that butcher shop, possibly a slave working for his master's profit, the teacher leading a group of children to their lessons. Often a Greek slave. Nearly 1/3 of the city's population lives in bondage, and you're realizing how the entire economy and social structure depends on their unpaid labor. You finally return to your insula, sweating despite the early hour. The day is warming up quickly, and carrying water upstairs is exhausting work. As you climb back up those treacherous stairs, you pass neighbors heading out to their daily labors. A weaver, a cobbler, a construction worker, a scribe. Everyone has somewhere to be. The third impactful moment arrives as you're nearly back to your room. A sudden commotion below as a rent collector enters the building. The procurator insulae works for the building's owner and is notorious for his harsh methods. Tenants who fall behind face immediate eviction or worse. You hear shouting, pleading, the sound of something or someone hitting the floor. Rent is typically due at the beginning of each month, and it's collected in cash. There are no tenant protection laws, no recourse for unfair treatment. You reach your room, pour some precious water into a basin, and splash your face. The water turns instantly grey from the street dirt. You take a small sip to quench your thirst, careful to conserve what must last you the day. Looking out your window, you can see the city stretching toward the 7 hills. Despite the filth and danger, there's an undeniable energy to Rome. Every major road eventually leads here to the heart of an empire spanning 3 continents. 1 million people from every corner of the known world crowd into this city that simultaneously represents the height of human achievement and the depth of human misery. It's getting late in the morning now, approaching the 3rd hour by Roman reckoning, around 9 a.m. by your count. If you were a proper Roman client, you would have already attended the salutatio, the morning greeting where clients pay respects to their patrons, receive their instructions for the day, and perhaps collect their sportula. This brings you to the 4th impactful moment. You realize you need a patron. Without one, you have no protection, no social network, no one to vouch for you or provide opportunities. In Rome, isolation is not just loneliness, it's vulnerability. You need to establish yourself in the client-patron system, but how? You have no family connections here, no letters of introduction. You're literally a person out of time, with no place in the intricate social web that defines Roman society. As the morning advances, you decide to venture out again, this time toward the Forum, the beating heart of Roman public life. Perhaps there you can observe how others navigate this complex society, learn the unwritten rules, find an opening. You lock your door with its flimsy latch, knowing full well it will provide little security for your few possessions. The Roman morning rushes onward around you. Street vendors shout their wares, shoppers haggle over prices, messengers dash between important buildings, priests process toward temples, and everywhere the constant human current of a city more densely populated than most modern ones. Noise is relentless. No noise ordinances exist here, no concern for peace and quiet. You're beginning to understand why wealthy Romans fled to country villas whenever possible. The city is overwhelming to all senses. The smells assault your nose: sweat, smoke, cooking, animals, waste. The sounds batter your ears: shouting, hammering, animal cries, cartwheels on stone. The sights bombard your eyes: colors, movement, danger coming from all directions. And you've only experienced the first few hours of a Roman day. Already you're exhausted, filthy, thirsty, and acutely aware of your precarious position in a society that has no place for you. The sun hasn't even reached its zenith, and already you're questioning whether you'll survive the week. The morning ritual of Roman life has stripped away your modern expectations and left you with this stark reality. Rome was not built for your comfort. It was built by and for people hardened by a daily existence that would break most contemporary humans. Within hours, as you join the flow of humanity heading toward the Forum, you realize that your education about ancient Rome has failed to prepare you for the visceral experience of actually living it, and the day has only just begun. The sun climbs higher in the sky as you make your way through the bustling streets toward the Roman Forum. Your stomach growls, reminding you that you haven't eaten yet today. The concept of breakfast as you know it, a hearty morning meal to start the day, simply doesn't exist here in ancient Rome. This realization marks the first impactful moment of your culinary journey through the empire, the shocking reality of the Roman breakfast. For most Romans, the first meal of the day, jentaculum, is minimal at best. As you pass a small taberna with its counter facing the street, you observe locals quickly grabbing pieces of bread dipped in wine or olive oil. Some add a bit of salt, others a smear of honey if they can afford it. That's it. No eggs, no bacon, no coffee to jumpstart your system. Just bread and wine, even for children. You approach the counter mimicking what you've seen. The proprietor, a heavy-set man with forearms thick as tree trunks, barely glances at you as he tears a chunk from a large, round loaf of bread. This isn't the airy white bread you're accustomed to. It's dense, brown and heavy, made from coarsely ground wheat that still contains bits of the millstone used to grind it. You hand over a small copper coin, an as, and receive your bread dipped in posca, a mixture of sour wine and water that most common Romans drink throughout the day. The bread is sour and chewy, requiring serious effort from your jaw. The posca tastes like vinegar with hints of herbs, thyme perhaps, and something else you can't identify. It's not pleasant, but you notice it quenches your thirst better than water alone, and the slight alcohol content offers a subtle warmth in your chest. You understand now why Romans drink this throughout the day. It's safer than water, provides some calories, and in small quantities, keeps workers alert without intoxicating them. Your meager breakfast consumed while standing at the counter. There are no chairs, no tables for ordinary patrons. You continue toward the markets. Roman society revolves around its midday meal, the cena, which was once eaten at noon but has gradually shifted to late afternoon among the upper classes. You'll need to purchase food for that and for a light evening supper called vesperna. The street opens onto a larger thoroughfare lined with shops selling everything imaginable. Metal workers hammer at copper and bronze pots. Leather workers stitch sandals and belts, and fabric merchants display rough wool and luxurious imported silks. The air fills with the shouts of commerce in a dozen languages, Latin primarily, but also Greek, Aramaic, Egyptian, and others you can't identify. Then you smell it, the Macellum, Rome's food market. Following your nose, you turn down a side street and emerge into a large square surrounded by permanent shop stalls under covered porticos. The sensory assault is immediate and overwhelming. This second impactful moment, shopping at the Macellum, amid social tensions, reveals how food acquisition itself is a complex social performance in Rome. In the center of the square stands a fountain where fishmongers clean their products, tossing waste back into the water that grows increasingly murky as the day progresses. The stench of fish mingles with the aromas of fresh bread, roasting meats, pungent garum, fish sauce, and the body odor of hundreds of shoppers packed into the confined space. You notice immediately that not everyone shops for themselves. Wealthy Romans send slaves or servants to purchase daily provisions. You can identify these household slaves easily. They carry large baskets and leather purses of coins, moving purposefully from stall to stall with the confidence of regular customers. Some are accompanied by armed guards if they carry substantial sums or will be purchasing valuable items. As you hesitantly approach a vegetable seller's stall, you observe a tense interaction unfolding beside you. A patrician woman carried to market in a litter and now shopping personally for what appears to be a special dinner, argues vehemently with a merchant over the quality of his figs. Her two attendant slaves stand silently behind her, faces carefully, blank as their mistress's voice rises. "These were picked 3 days ago at least," she accuses, her patrician accent marking her as a member of Rome's elite. "Do you take me for a fool? Or perhaps you save your rotting produce for your poorer customers?" The merchant, clearly experienced in handling difficult patrons, maintains a deferential tone while standing his ground. "Domina, I swear by Jupiter Optimus Maximus these figs arrived from my brother's farm before dawn today. Perhaps the noble lady would prefer to select each one personally. For your discerning taste, I would offer a special price." You note how the interaction balances on a knife's edge. The merchant must show proper respect to social superiors while protecting his livelihood. The patrician woman, for all her power, needs the merchant's goods and cannot simply commandeer them as she might in her own household. Commerce creates a small bubble where normal social hierarchies bend slightly. When the woman finally selects a dozen figs at what you suspect is still an inflated price, you approach the vegetable seller with newfound caution. You point to a bunch of green leaves that resemble lettuce. "Lactuca," the merchant tells you, naming the lettuce. 3 asses. The price seems high for lettuce, but you're in no position to haggle effectively. You hand over the coins and add a small bunch of radishes for 2 more asses. Your funds are dwindling alarmingly fast. Moving through the market, you continue to observe what people are buying. The third impactful moment strikes you as you watch different social classes making their food purchases. The stark class differences revealed through food access. A wealthy equestrian man instructs his cook, an expensive, specialized slave, to purchase ingredients for what sounds like an elaborate dinner party. You hear him mention peacock, sow's udder, sea urchins, and dormice, yes, dormice, fattened in special clay pots and served with honey and poppy seeds as a delicacy. The rich, you realize, eat to display their wealth, serving exotic foods simply because they can afford them. Meanwhile, a laborer, not unlike yourself, counts copper coins carefully before purchasing fava beans, a small piece of cheese, and the cheapest garum which comes from the dregs of the fish sauce vats. His entire day's food costs less than a single dish at the equestrian's upcoming dinner. You continue your shopping, guided by what you see ordinary Romans purchasing. Olive oil is essential, used for cooking, lighting, and even cleaning the body, but quality varies dramatically by price. You select a small clay bottle of mid-grade oil. Grain would be cheaper than bread, but you have no means to cook it in your small room, so you purchase another small loaf for later. A bit of cheese, some olives, a handful of dried figs, and a few cups of watered wine complete your purchases. As you're examining some dates imported from Egypt, a commotion erupts near the grain merchants. Several men in official-looking tunics are measuring the grain sacks with bronze rods, checking weights and volumes. One merchant is being loudly accused of selling underweight measures. "The Dial will hear of this," shouts the inspector, referring to the city official responsible. For markets and public buildings, "Your license will be revoked," the crowd murmurs. Food fraud is a serious offense, particularly with grain, which forms the foundation of the Roman diet. Many poorer citizens survive primarily on grain porridge, pulse, enriched with whatever vegetables or scraps of meat they can afford. Cheating on grain measures doesn't just defraud customers, it potentially starves them. You notice some of the poorest residents standing at the edge of the market, holding small wooden tokens. These, you realize, are recipients of the grain dole, the frumentatio, a government program providing free or subsidized grain to eligible citizens. It's part welfare program, part political insurance against unrest. As the Roman saying goes, bread and circuses keep the masses from revolution. With your purchases secured in a small cloth bag, you leave the market planning to return to your insula to store your food before exploring more of the city. As you walk, you pass numerous thermopolia, fast food counters with large clay jars, dolia, embedded in the counters containing hot food ready for a quick meal. The aroma of stewed lentils, fish and porridge wafts from these establishments, tempting workers who have no cooking facilities in their apartments. You pause at one such counter, watching a midday crowd form. Workers with earth-stained hands and sweat-soaked tunics line up for their main meal of the day. A man ladles bean stew into a customer's bowl, adding a generous splash of the ever-present garum fish sauce. Another server chops herbs and tosses them into the mix. The customer hands over his coins and moves to a corner to eat quickly before returning to work. This isn't just takeaway food as you understand it. For many urban Romans, these thermopolia are their primary source of hot meals. The poorest apartment dwellers have no hearths, no cooking equipment, and no fuel. The choice is either cold food in their rooms or hot food from these establishments. As afternoon approaches, you notice a shift in the city's rhythm. Shops begin closing for the midday break. The Roman day divides differently than yours. Work begins at dawn, pauses during the hottest hours, and resumes later until sunset. During this break, those who can afford to will return home for the cena, the day's main meal. The fourth impactful moment of your food journey unfolds as evening approaches, and you receive an unexpected dinner invitation from a minor scribe you met near the forum. He's hosting a modest dinner party, not an elaborate affair like those thrown by the wealthy, but still a formal cena involving specific customs and expectations. This experience reveals the politics of eating in Roman society. You arrive at the appointed hour, bringing a small gift of honey cakes purchased from a street vendor. The scribe's apartment, while modest by elite standards, is considerably more spacious than your rented room. It occupies the entire second floor of a well-maintained building, with actual separate rooms for different functions, a luxury by insular standards. The dining room contains 3 couches, the triclinium arrangement, positioned around a central table. You've read about this, but experiencing it is different. Romans don't sit at dinner, they recline on their left sides, propped up on one elbow with their right hands free for eating. Your host greets you and introduces his other guests, another scribe, a minor government clerk, and a Greek freedman who teaches at a local school. You quickly discern that this gathering isn't merely social, it's a careful cultivation of useful connections, a microcosm of the patron-client relationships that permeate Roman society. A house slave, your host owns just 2, brings water for hand washing before the meal begins. There are no forks or knives set at your place, just a spoon. Romans eat primarily with their fingers, using bread to scoop up sauces and softer foods, which explains the ritual hand washing before and during meals. The dinner progresses through traditional courses, the gustatio appetizers, featuring olives, eggs, and small salads dressed with garum and vinegar. The prime mensae, main dishes of fish, vegetables, and a small roast chicken. And finally, the secundae mensae dessert, consisting of fresh and dried fruits, nuts, and small honey cakes similar to those you brought. Throughout the meal, you notice how food and politics intertwine inextricably. Your host serves better portion. To the government clerk, clearly currying favor. Wine is served according to status, better quality to important guests, more watered-down versions to lesser ones. Even the couches are assigned by rank, with the middle couch, the locus consularis, reserved for the most honored guest. Conversation carefully navigates class boundaries. No one discusses certain topics before slaves, who are treated as simultaneously present and invisible, capable of hearing state secrets but somehow presumed incapable of acting on them. The wine flows more freely as the evening progresses, though nothing like the excesses you've read about at elite banquets. There are no vomitoria here, contrary to popular myth. These were exits in amphitheaters, not rooms for purging between courses. This is a respectable, middle-class dinner where overindulgence would be considered vulgar and wasteful. As you recline, awkwardly on your elbow, a position growing increasingly uncomfortable as the hours pass, you reflect on how Roman food culture differs from your own. Meals aren't just for nourishment, they're performances of status, arenas for political networking, and displays of cultural knowledge. Knowing which foods to eat, how to eat them, and with whom to share them matters as much as the flavors themselves. By the time you bid your host goodbye and step back into the darkening streets, you've experienced the full spectrum of Roman food customs in a single day. From the minimal gentaculum to the social complexity of the scena, from the bustling tension of the macellum to the stark inequalities of who eats what, food in ancient Rome tells the story of society itself. As you make your way carefully back to your insula, avoiding the waste being thrown from windows above and the cut purses lurking in shadowy doorways, your modern sensibilities regarding food have been thoroughly challenged. In Rome, you eat according to your station, according to tradition, and according to complex social rules that have nothing to do with personal preference or nutrition as you understand it. Your stomach may be full, but your mind races with new understanding of how fundamental food is to Roman identity and social structure. And somehow, despite all you've eaten today, you already find yourself missing the simple comfort of a modern breakfast. Dawn breaks on your third day in ancient Rome. You've survived the overwhelming sensory assault of Roman streets and navigated the complex social terrain of meals and markets. Now comes the most pressing concern of any person in any era: how to earn your keep. Finding your place in the Roman economy, the first impactful moment of your workday, presents challenges you never considered in your history books. You rise early, as all Romans do, and head into the streets with a purpose. With your funds dwindling rapidly, you need employment. The Roman economy offers no safety nets, no unemployment benefits, no charitable organizations to sustain those who cannot support themselves. Work or starve, the equation is that simple. The streets fill with craftsmen, laborers, and merchants, heading to their shops and work sites. Unlike the modern world, there are no help-wanted signs, no job applications, no interviews as you understand them. Employment in Rome comes through connections and apprenticeships, usually arranged in childhood. As an outsider with no family, no patron, and no trade connections, your options narrow considerably. You make your way toward the Sabura district, a working-class neighborhood where day laborers gather in the early morning, hoping to be selected for work. Dozens of men, and they are all men. Most female labor happens within households or in specific women's trades, stand in small groups organized loosely by skill. Stonemasons cluster near carpenters, while unskilled laborers form the largest group, shifting anxiously as potential employers approach. A contractor arrives looking for 10 men to carry building materials to a construction site on the Esquiline Hill. The crowd surges forward. Men shout their qualifications, push past one another, some even offering to work for less than the standard wage. The desperation is palpable. The contractor selects his workers quickly, choosing the strongest-looking men and those he seems to recognize from previous jobs. You're not among them. 3 more contractors come and go, and each time the rejection stings more sharply. By mid-morning, most laborers have found work or given up, leaving you standing with a handful of others, the elderly, the obviously ill, and a few like yourself who simply don't fit in. An older man with a deeply lined face and missing teeth notices your confusion. "First time?" he asks in rough Latin. You nod, and he offers advice that constitutes your crash course in Roman labor economics. Slaves provide much of the workforce, depressing wages for free laborers. Skilled trades are closed systems controlled by guilds, collegia. And most businesses are family operations that hire from within their extended networks. As an outsider with no skills they recognize, you face significant barriers. Try the docks, he suggests finally. They always need bodies to unload ships when they come in. Pay's poor, and the work breaks men young, but they don't ask questions. You thank him and head toward the Tiber River, where Rome's port facilities handle goods from across the empire. The walk takes you through increasingly industrial neighborhoods, past tanneries with their overwhelming stench of urine used in the leather curing process, dye works with brightly colored wastewater flowing into street gutters, and brick factories belching smoke from wood-fired kilns. At the docks, you encounter the second impactful moment, the brutal reality of trade and craft guilds. A foreman surveys the crowd of hopeful workers, selecting a few who display wooden tokens, membership tallies for the Dockworkers Guild. Those without tokens, including yourself, are ignored until all guild members have been assigned work. Eventually, a particularly large ship arrives requiring more hands than the guild can provide. The foreman grudgingly selects several non-guild workers, including you. He offers half the standard wage, knowing you have no leverage to negotiate. You accept, immediately grateful for any income. The work is punishing. For hours, you help unload amphorae, tall, pointed clay jars containing olive oil, wine, and garum from Spain. Each weighs between 50 and 70 pounds, and they must be carried carefully up narrow planks from the ship's hold to the dock, then loaded onto carts. For transport to warehouses, your back and shoulders scream with pain, your hands blister, then bleed. The summer sun beats down mercilessly, and water breaks are brief and infrequent. By midday, you're lightheaded with exhaustion. A man working beside you collapses and is simply dragged aside, his day's wages forfeit. You push on, afraid to show weakness. The dock workers' guild members watch non-guild laborers closely, ready to report any who can't keep pace. They see you as a threat to their livelihoods, undercutting their hard-won wage agreements. One accidentally shoves you as you carry a particularly heavy amphora. You nearly fall, but somehow maintain your balance, saving yourself from a broken amphora that would cost more than you'll earn in a month. During a brief rest, you learn why guild membership is so jealously guarded. A dock worker explains that his father purchased his membership for him, paying a hefty entrance fee and completing years of apprenticeship. The guild provides some security, guaranteed work priority, standardized wages, a burial fund for members, and occasional feasts in honor of Mercury, patron deity of commerce. For a Roman worker, guild membership represents the difference between subsistence and destitution. By afternoon, your body is failing. The foreman notices and assigns you to counting incoming goods instead. A slight reprieve, though at even lower pay. This new position offers an unintended education in the scale of Roman commerce. You watch as exotic goods from 3 continents flow through the port. Spices from India, silk from China, ivory from Africa, amber from the Baltic, tin from Britain. Despite its technological limitations, Rome operates a globalized economy that won't be matched again for 1,000 years. This observation leads to the third impactful moment, encountering slavery in everyday business. A merchant oversees the unloading of his cargo, humans. Men and women, chained together, stumble down the gangplank. Their origin is unclear, perhaps prisoners of war from a frontier conflict, perhaps victims of pirates or slave traders operating beyond Roman borders. They stand on the dock, exposed to public view, as potential buyers examine them like livestock. The merchant calls out their qualities: strong backs, skilled hands, youth, docility. Some buyers check teeth, squeeze muscles, look for scars indicating past punishments or escape attempts. The proceedings carry the casual efficiency of a livestock auction. What strikes you most is how unremarkable this scene appears to everyone else. Dock workers continue their tasks, merchants haggle over prices, officials check customs documents, all while human beings are bought and sold within arm's reach. Slavery isn't hidden in Rome. It's the visible foundation upon which the entire economy stands. You force yourself to watch, to remember. A young woman with vacant eyes is purchased by a textile merchant, likely bound for a wool workshop where she'll spend 14 hours a day at a loom. A muscular young man goes to a miller who needs someone to turn the heavy grain-grinding stones, work so brutal that even convicts are spared from it. An older man with calloused hands, perhaps a captured craftsman, fetches a higher price for his skills. The slave auction concludes, and you return to your counting duties with a new perspective on Rome's economic might. The empire doesn't just run on roads and aqueducts, it runs on human ownership. Even the poorest free Roman can think of someone below them in the social hierarchy. As afternoon fades toward evening, you experience the fourth impactful moment of your workday. The dangers of idleness during Rome's afternoon closure. The docks grow quieter as workers complete their shifts. The foreman pays you your meager wages, a few copper asses that will barely cover tomorrow's food. As other workers head to bathhouses or taverns, you find yourself alone in an unfamiliar district as businesses close for the midday break. The industrial areas, busy and relatively safe during working hours, quickly empty as craftsmen secure their workshops against theft. You wander through increasingly deserted streets, acutely aware of how vulnerable you've become. A group of rough-looking men notice your isolated state and begin following at a distance. You quicken your pace, looking for crowded areas or a watchman, but it's the wrong time of day. The afternoon lull leaves streets eerily empty. The men following you call out mockingly. One suggests you might have valuables worth taking. Another mentions the slave markets would ask no questions about your origins. You break into a run, turning randomly down side streets, eventually losing your pursuers, but also losing your way. You find yourself in an unfamiliar neighborhood as afternoon shades into evening. Workshops remain closed, but taverns and thermopolia reopen for evening business. You duck into a small tavern, spending precious coins on watered wine simply to have a safe place to rest. The tavern buzzes with the conversations of workers unwinding after their day's labor. Carpenters discuss an upcoming project at the Emperor's Palace. Tanners complain about new regulations restricting where they can discharge wastewater. A group of construction workers argue over which contractor pays most fairly. Listening to their conversations provides an education in working-class Roman life. You learn that most laborers work from dawn until the 6th or 7th hour, around noon to 1 p.m. in your reckoning, break during the hottest part of the day, then resume from the 9th hour until sunset around 3 p.m. until evening. This schedule accommodates Rome's climate and the absence of artificial lighting for most businesses. You also learn about the irregular nature of Roman work. Many laborers might find employment only 3 or 4 days a week, depending on construction, projects, shipping schedules, or seasonal needs. Few have enough savings to weather prolonged unemployment. A wet winter with halted construction projects can lead to starvation for many families. As the tavern grows more crowded, you notice groups forming by occupation, another manifestation of the guild system. Even in leisure, Romans organize themselves by trade. The wool workers keep to their corner, the metal workers to theirs. Each group has its own patron deity, its own festivals, its own internal hierarchies. Evening approaches, and you must decide whether to attempt another day at the docks or seek alternative employment. Your aching body argues against more dock work, but the alternatives seem limited. You could try for messenger work if you knew the city better. Food service requires connections to establish trust. Street performance needs talents you may not possess. The hard truth of Roman economics settles over you. Without specialized skills, family connections, or a patron support, survival means accepting the most physically demanding and dangerous work available to free persons. Even then, economic security remains an illusion. Injury, illness, or simple bad luck can plunge anyone into destitution within days. As you nurse your wine, calculating how to stretch your meager earnings, you notice the tavern keeper watching. You, a foreigner, clearly out of place. He approaches, asking where you're from in the direct manner Romans often adopt. Your stumbling explanation seems to amuse rather than alarm him. "Need steady work?" he asks finally. "My dishwasher died of fever last week. Job's yours if you want it. Includes a sleeping space in the storeroom and 1 meal daily." The offer represents a startling change in fortune, not wealth by any measure, but the precious commodities of shelter, food security, and regular employment. You accept immediately, recognizing that in Rome's economy, attachment to an established business offers protection that independent labor cannot provide. As the tavern keeper shows you to the tiny storeroom that will become your new home, a space hardly larger than a modern closet but infinitely preferable to your precarious insular room, you reflect on what you've learned about work in the ancient world. Employment isn't just economic in Rome. It's social identity, political affiliation, religious community, and personal security all bound together. Your modern notions of career advancement, professional development, and work-life balance have no meaning here. Work in Rome isn't something you do. It's who you are, defined by birth and circumstance, far more than personal choice or ambition. The dream of working hard to improve one's station, the foundation of modern capitalism, exists only in the narrowest circumstances in ancient Rome. As you collapse onto the thin pallet in your storeroom, body aching from unaccustomed labor, you don't know whether to feel despair at the limited prospects facing ordinary Romans or gratitude for the relative security you've found. Perhaps both are appropriate responses to a world where economic survival requires a combination of brutal effort and extraordinary luck. A week has passed since you began working at the tavern. Your hands have developed calluses from scrubbing, countless clay cups and plates with abrasive sand. Your back aches less from lifting heavy water jugs. You've settled into the rhythm of Roman working life, rising before dawn, working until midday, resting during the hottest hours, then working again until well after sunset. The days blur together in an endless cycle of labor punctuated only by sleep. But there's one aspect of Roman life you've been avoiding out of both fear and disgust: the public facilities for bodily functions. The tiny storeroom where you sleep has no private toilet, no basin for washing beyond a small clay bowl. For a week, you've made do with minimal cleanliness, using a chamber pot and emptying it in the tavern's waste channel, wiping your body with a damp cloth when the smell becomes too noticeable. Today, however, the tavern keeper eyes you critically during the morning preparations. He wrinkles his nose and shakes his head. "You stink," he says bluntly in the direct manner Romans often use to address inferiors. "Bad for business. Go to the baths before your afternoon shift. Here." He tosses you a small copper coin. "Enough for the basic entrance fee. Get yourself clean." You've been dreading this moment. The Roman attitude toward bodily functions and public bathing is radically different from modern sensibilities, but there's no avoiding it any longer. With resignation, you accept the coin and ask directions to the nearest public facilities. He points you toward a building down the street. "Forica first," he advises, using the Latin term for public toilets. "Then thermi for bathing. Don't embarrass me by smelling like a corpse around my customers." You set off with trepidation, locating the public toilet facility easily by following your nose. The distinctive odor emanating from the rectangular stone building signals its function. From a block away, taking a deep breath of relatively fresher air, you steel yourself and enter. The first impactful moment of your hygiene journey hits you immediately: the communal toilet experience. Nothing in your modern life has prepared you for this before. You stretch as a room with a long stone bench running along 3 walls. The bench is punctuated at regular intervals by round holes, at least 20 of them, with no dividers, no privacy screens, nothing to separate one user from another. The facility is moderately busy, with about half the seats occupied. Men sit casually. The facility is gender segregated with a separate section for women. Some chatting with their neighbors, others reading from scrolls or wax tablets. No one shows the slightest embarrassment or concern about privacy. A slave at the entrance hands out small sponges attached to sticks for personal cleaning. These, you realize with horror, are rinsed in the water channel flowing beneath the seats and then reused by the next patron. Swallowing your revulsion, you select a seat with vacant spots on either side, providing at least minimal separation from others. The stone is cold against your bare skin. A shallow channel of running water flows under the bench, carrying waste away to the Cloaca Maxima, Rome's main sewer system. The engineering is impressive, but the smell remains overwhelming despite the flowing water. A well-dressed man, several seats away, nods pleasantly in your direction, then continues his conversation with his neighbor about grain shipments from Egypt, conducting business while attending to bodily functions. A beggar enters, moving from person to person, requesting small coins, unperturbed by the setting. A food vendor follows, selling egg tarts and small cups of wine. The Romans treat this space as a social setting, not merely a utilitarian facility. You complete your business as quickly as possible, declining the communal sponge in favor of using a small cloth you've brought. As you prepare to leave, a functionary appears with a collection box, requesting a quadrans, the smallest Roman coin, for use of the facility. Fortunately, patrons of your tavern sometimes leave small tips and you have a few quadrantes in. your tunic. You deposit one and exit gratefully into the open air. The public toilet experience has reinforced something you're learning about Romans. Their concept of public and private differs fundamentally from yours. What modern people consider intensely private, Romans often treat as communal activities. Conversely, some things modern people discuss openly would be considered inappropriate topics in Roman society. It's not that Romans lack modesty, it's that they define it differently. Your next destination is the Thermae, the public baths that form the centerpiece of Roman hygiene practices and social life. Following the tavern keeper's directions, you walk several blocks to a modest neighborhood bathhouse. This isn't one of the massive imperial complexes like the baths of Trajan that can accommodate thousands of bathers simultaneously. It's a local establishment serving the working-class neighborhood where you now live. The second impactful moment occurs as you enter the Grand Thermae, even this neighborhood facility dwarfing any public building you might use in daily life in the modern world. The entrance fee is modest, the quadrans the tavern keeper gave you, making bathing affordable to most free Romans. Slaves accompanying their masters enter without paying. The truly destitute are excluded, but some wealthy patrons occasionally pay for free public bathing days as displays of generosity. The attendant at the entrance takes your coin and directs you to the apoditerium, the changing room. You quickly discover another aspect of Roman bathing culture. Nudity is expected and unremarkable. Men of all ages and social classes disrobe unself-consciously, storing their clothing in small niches along the wall. There are no lockers, no keys. Theft is discouraged by slaves who monitor the room, though you notice wealthier patrons have brought their own slaves to guard their belongings. You undress hesitantly, hyper-aware of your exposed body in a way no one else seems to be. A patrician with a generous belly chats with a laborer whose muscled physique reveals his occupation. A hunched, elderly man receives help disrobing from a younger relative. Bodies of all shapes, sizes, and ages are on display without shame or judgment, at least regarding physical appearance. The subtle markers of status remain: quality of the clothes being stored, the presence of personal slaves, the quality of bathing implements brought from home. Following the flow of patrons, you enter the tepidarium, a warm room designed to open the pores and prepare the body for more intense heat. The room is heated by an ingenious system called a hypocaust, with hot air flowing through spaces beneath the raised floor and within the walls. This technological marvel keeps the room at a pleasant temperature despite the cool spring day outside. The tepidarium buzzes with conversation. Men recline on benches discussing politics, business, philosophy, and neighborhood gossip. You recognize a merchant who frequents your tavern deep in discussion with a man wearing the distinctive cloak of a philosopher. Next to them, two craftsmen argue amicably about the upcoming chariot races, placing small wagers on their favored teams. This leads to the third impactful moment, discovering the social politics of cleanliness in Roman society. The baths, you realize, are far more than hygienic facilities. They are the social hubs where Roman men, bathing at different hours than women in most establishments, form connections, exchange information, conduct business, and establish their place in the community. You listen carefully to conversations around you, absorbing valuable information about your adopted neighborhood. Complaints about a corrupt vigile, watchman, who demands bribes from local businesses. Rumors about grain, shipments delayed by storms potentially raising bread prices. Gossip about a wealthy widow who has married her much younger steward, scandalizing her family but delighting the neighborhood matchmakers. After sufficient time in the tepidarium, you follow others into the caldarium, the hot room, the heat. Here is intense, raising sweat that pours from your body. Slaves circulate with flasks of olive oil, which patrons apply to their skin. You hesitate, unsure of the procedure, and a middle-aged man notices your confusion. "First time in the baths?" he asks, not unkindly. When you nod, he explains the process. Oil is applied to the skin, then scraped off with a curved metal tool called a strigil, removing dirt, sweat, and dead skin in the process. He offers you some of his oil and demonstrates the technique. "You're not from Rome," he observes, "helping you angle the strigil properly across your back. It's not a question." "No," you admit, wondering if your accent betrays you or simply your ignorance of basic Roman customs. "Neither was I once," he says. "From Hispania, originally. Rome takes everyone eventually." He introduces himself as Lucius, a former legionary, who now works as a carpenter after completing his military service. He continues to guide you through proper bathing protocol with the patient air of someone who remembers his own first bewildering days in the capital. After the intense heat of the caldarium, you move to the frigidarium, a cold plunge pool that closes the pores and invigorates the body. The shock of cold water after such heat takes your breath away, but the resulting sensation is undeniably refreshing. Your skin tingles as blood rushes to the surface. For the first time in a week, you feel truly clean. Lucius continues your impromptu education in bath etiquette, pointing out the exercise yard where more energetic patrons wrestle and lift weights before bathing, and the exedra where a public reader entertains a small audience with selections from popular works. In larger imperial baths, he tells you, one might find libraries, lecture halls, art galleries, and food vendors, everything needed to spend an entire day in leisure and self-improvement. Most Romans come at least daily, he explains. Some do business here instead of at the forum. Others come for the physician who visits weekly. Some just to escape cramped apartments. A few denarii buys you warmth, cleanliness, and civilization. For a few hours, you realize he's right. Despite initial discomfort with the public nudity and communal facilities, you're experiencing a profound sense of well-being. The combination of heat, cold, cleanliness, and social interaction stimulates both body and mind. Romans may lack private bathrooms with hot and cold running water, but their public bathing facilities surpass many modern equivalents in engineering, social function, and holistic approach to health. After completing the bathing circuit, you return to the apoditerium to dress. Your body feels lighter, your mind clearer. You're beginning to understand why Romans consider regular bathing essential, not just for physical cleanliness, but for proper citizenship. To be Roman is to be clean, at least by their definition. The fourth impactful moment comes as you exit the baths and walk back through the city streets. The paradox of Roman hygiene. Your body is impeccably clean. Your tunic, though worn, was washed yesterday, and you feel refreshed, yet you step back into streets flowing with sewage, waste thrown from windows, and the decomposing remains of food and animals. This contradiction epitomizes Rome itself. The civilization that engineered magnificent aqueducts delivering more fresh water per capita than many modern cities still lacks basic waste management. The culture that elevates daily bathing to an art form still packs citizens into apartments without toilet facilities. The society sophisticated enough to develop underfloor heating still allows human waste to accumulate on street corners. As you carefully navigate around a rotting dog carcass that no one has bothered to remove, the disparity becomes clear. Roman hygiene is primarily concerned with personal cleanliness, with public sanitation, a secondary consideration addressed through infrastructure rather than individual responsibility. Streets aren't filthy because Romans don't value cleanliness. They're filthy because public space is viewed differently than private bodies. You return to the tavern, noticeably cleaner and somewhat enlightened about Roman social customs. The tavern keeper nods approvingly at your improved appearance. "Better," he grunts. "Make it a regular habit. Customers don't trust dirty servants." As you resume your duties, you reflect on how the Roman approach to hygiene reveals their broader worldview. The emphasis on public bathing rather than private facilities reinforces community bonds while maintaining strict social hierarchies. The technological marvels of aqueducts and heated floors demonstrate engineering prowess focused on specific comforts rather than comprehensive solutions. The paradox of immaculate bodies moving through filthy streets mirrors the broader contradictions of a civilization simultaneously sophisticated and brutal, refined and coarse, inclusive and stratified. You've survived your introduction to Roman hygiene practices, overcoming initial revulsion to appreciate the social and physical benefits of their bathing culture. But you've also glimpsed the limitations of their approach, the blind spots that leave streets fetid and disease rampant despite engineering capable of remarkable feats. As you pour wine for tavern patrons, your cleaned body already beginning to accumulate the sweat and grime of work, you understand that tomorrow will bring another visit to the bar, and the day after that, and the day after that. In Rome, cleanliness is never a permanent state. It's a daily practice, a social ritual, and a brief respite from the filth that pervades urban life. The contradiction you're learning is Rome itself. 2 weeks have passed since your arrival in ancient Rome. You've adapted to the rhythm of daily life. The early mornings, the midday breaks, the evening return to work. Your position at the tavern provides stability, if not comfort. You're learning the language better each day, picking up colloquial Latin phrases from customers and your fellow workers. You're no longer quite so obviously a foreigner, though you'll never truly be Roman. This morning, something unusual catches your attention. The tavern keeper rises before dawn, earlier than his normal routine. He moves to a small alcove near the cooking hearth, where a tiny wooden cabinet sits on a shelf. Opening its doors reveals miniature figures, crudely carved representations of human forms. He places a small bowl of porridge before these figures, adds a few drops of wine, and whispers words too quiet for you to hear. The scene strikes you as intimate, almost vulnerable, a stark contrast to his usually gruff demeanor. This first impactful moment, witnessing morning prayers to household gods, opens your eyes to how thoroughly religion permeates every aspect of Roman daily life. These aren't the grand state ceremonies you've read about in history books. This is domestic religion, practiced in every household from the grandest villa to the humblest apartment. When he finishes, you ask hesitantly about the small figures. Rather than showing irritation at your intrusion, he seems pleased by your interest. "The lares and penates," he explains, his voice taking on an unusual softness. "The lares protect our household. The penates watch over our provisions and prosperity." He points to another small figure. "And that is the genius of the household, my personal protective spirit." You've stumbled upon one of the most fundamental aspects of Roman religious life, the cult of household deities. These aren't remote gods dwelling on mountaintops or in grand temples. These are intimate presences believed to directly influence daily fortune and misfortune. Every morning offerings, he continues, every significant meal, a portion set aside, every important household decision, consultation. He closes the cabinet doors gently. "They have protected this place for 3 generations of my family. My grandfather built this shrine when he opened this tavern. My father maintained it. Now I do the same." The tavern keeper's relationship with these household deities isn't based on fear or blind devotion. It's transactional, practical. He provides regular offerings and respect, and they provide protection and prosperity. This contractual approach to the divine, you'll come to realize, characterizes much of Roman religious practice. As you begin your morning duties, you notice similar shrines in neighboring shops. Some are elaborate, with painted figures and small marble altars. Others are simple niches with crude clay representations. But each receives its morning attention. A sprinkle of grain, a drop of wine, a whispered prayer. Religion in Rome isn't something practiced only in temples or on special occasions. It's woven into the fabric of every hour, every transaction, every threshold crossed. Later that morning, while delivering wine to a regular customer at a nearby workshop, you encounter the second impactful moment, navigating Rome's complex pantheon of deities. The workshop produces bronze fittings for furniture and building projects. Inside, alongside the expected shrine to household gods, you notice a much more elaborate altar dedicated to Vulcan, god of fire and metalworking. The timing of your delivery coincides with a small ceremony. The workshop owner, his workers, and apprentices gather around the altar. A small piece of bronze, perfectly formed but deliberately flawed, is ceremonially broken and placed in a fire. The master recites a prayer, asking Vulcan to keep dangerous fires contained within the forge and to ensure the quality of their work. One of the apprentices notices your curiosity and explains in a whisper, "Every craft has its patron deity. Vulcan for us metal workers, Mercury for merchants, Minerva for doctors and artisans, Ceres for bakers." He points to various shops visible through the doorway. That fuller's shop? Minerva watches over their clothworking. The wine merchant? Bacchus, of course. The specialization of divine patronage creates a complex religious ecosystem where Romans might worship dozens of different deities depending on their activities. A single person could offer prayers to household Lares in the morning, make a gesture to Mercury when concluding a business deal midday, stop at Neptune's temple before a sea journey, and honor Mars before discussing military matters, all without any sense of contradiction or divided loyalty. Is there one god more important than the others? You ask the apprentice. He considers this seemingly simple question with surprising care. The Capitoline triad, Jupiter, Juno, and Minerva, they're the most powerful for the state, he explains. But importance depends who you ask. My mother would say Juno, who protects women in childbirth. My father, who was a sailor, always claimed Neptune held his fate. For me, it's Vulcan. He gestures to the forge. He decides whether I create beautiful work or burn down the shop today. This practical polytheism contrasts sharply with monotheistic worldviews. Romans don't see their many gods as a confused mythology, but as a sophisticated system addressing the complexity of human experience. Different aspects of life require different divine specialists. The idea that one deity should cover all aspects of existence would seem absurdly inefficient to most Romans. As you leave the workshop, you notice how thoroughly religion marks the physical landscape of Rome. Small shrines appear at crossroads, dedicated to the lares compitales who protect neighborhoods. Boundary stones marking property lines bear the image of Terminus, god of boundaries. Fountains feature water deities. Doorways display images of Janus, the two-faced god of transitions. The city itself functions as an enormous open-air temple with sacred space interwoven with secular. Later that week, your religious education deepens dramatically when the tavern keeper gives you an unexpected afternoon off. Festival of Jupiter. Today, he explains, business will be slow while the sacrifice happens. Return for the evening crowd. This unexpected freedom allows you to witness the third impactful moment, a public sacrifice at the temple of Jupiter Optimus Maximus on the Capitoline Hill. You join crowds streaming toward the temple, a magnificent structure that dominates one of Rome's 7 hills. The scale dwarfs most modern religious buildings, a statement of Rome's power as much as its piety. The ceremony has already begun when you arrive. Priests in distinctive clothing, their heads partially covered by togas, pulled up like hoods, lead a procession. At its center walks a white bull adorned with garlands and ribbons. The animal appears calm, unaware of its fate. The crowd falls respectfully silent as the procession approaches the temple's altar. What follows shocks your modern sensibilities, though the Romans around you watch with solemn familiarity. The bull is quickly dispatched with a hammer blow followed by a knife to the throat. Blood flows deliberately into collection vessels. The animal is systematically butchered, its internal organs examined with scientific precision by priests who announce their findings to the crowd. Favorable omens. The gods are pleased. The ceremony combines elements that seem contradictory to your modern perspective. Religious reverence alongside methodical butchery, spiritual communication through what amounts to veterinary examination. Yet to Romans, this represents the most serious form of divine communication. The gods speak through the appearance of sacrificial animals' organs, through the behavior of sacred chickens, through the flight patterns of birds. A man standing near you notices your slightly green complexion and chuckles. Not from Rome, are you? When you admit you aren't, he explains. The meat will feed the people now, nothing wasted, part for the gods burned on the altar, parts for the priests their payment, the rest distributed or sold at reduced prices. A public sacrifice means affordable meat for many who rarely taste it. You realize public sacrifice serves multiple functions: religious ceremony, political display, divination, and practical meat distribution. The Romans see no contradiction between sacred ritual and practical benefit. In fact, the combination reinforces their belief in the system's validity. Gods who provide tangible benefits deserve continued worship. As you watch smoke rise from the altar where chosen portions burn, the priest makes announcements about upcoming festivals, political appointments, and military developments. The temple isn't just a religious space, it's an administrative center, a news broadcaster, a community hub. The line between religion, politics, and civic life is essentially non-existent. The final impactful moment comes several days later, when whispers spread through the tavern about an imperial procession passing nearby. Customers and staff alike pour into the street to watch as the Emperor Hadrian himself passes by, returning from dedicating a new temple. The dangerous politics of emperor worship becomes immediately apparent. Crowds line the route, showing varying degrees of reverence. Some merely bow respectfully, others prostrate themselves as though in the presence of a god. The emperor himself maintains the fiction of being merely the first citizen, princeps, while accepting honors that blur the line between human and divine. A customer beside you whispers urgently when you fail to lower your gaze appropriately. Fool, show proper respect or we'll all suffer. His fear is palpable and contagious. This isn't just political caution, it's religious terror. Since the time of Augustus, emperors have occupied an ambiguous position between human and divine, not quite gods while living, at least not officially in Rome itself, but worshipped as gods in the provinces and formally deified after death if deemed worthy. The cult of the emperor represents something fundamentally different from traditional Roman religion. Traditional gods don't punish insufficient enthusiasm in their worship. The emperor's divine aura, however, comes with very earthly enforcement. Appearing insufficiently reverent can be interpreted as political dissent, or even treason. An old man near you mutters almost inaudibly, "In my grandfather's time, Romans bowed to no man like a Persian slave." But he bends low nonetheless as the imperial procession passes. The tension is palpable, traditional republican values clashing with the practical reality of imperial power, clothed in religious veneration. As the procession disappears around a corner, normal activity gradually resumes. The tavern refills with customers now buzzing with discussion of the emperor's appearance, his health, rumors of his building projects and military campaigns. No one directly questions the quasi-divine status accorded to the emperor, but subtle comments and exchanged glances suggest private reservations beneath public compliance. That evening, as you clean tables after closing, the tavern keeper surprises you with an unusually philosophical mood. "You know why our religion has survived 1,000 years?" he asks, not waiting for an answer. "Because it bends without breaking. We added the Greek gods to our old farm deities. We adopted Egypt's Isis, Persia's Mithras. Now we make gods of emperors." He shrugs. "Next year, next century, we'll worship something new alongside something old. That's Rome." His observation captures an essential truth about Roman religion. Far from being rigid or dogmatic, it demonstrates remarkable adaptability. Romans readily identify foreign deities with their own, Venus with Aphrodite, Mercury with Hermes, or simply add new gods to their existing pantheon. This religious syncretism, the blending and merging of different beliefs, gives Roman religion its distinctive flexibility. As you prepare for sleep that night, reflecting on all you've witnessed, you understand that religion in Rome isn't just what people believe, it's how they navigate their world. The gods provide an explanatory framework for fortune and misfortune, a social structure for community interaction, and a psychological buffer against life's uncertainties. From the personal relationship with household lares to the impressive state ceremonies at Jupiter's temple, from craft-specific patron deities to the complicated reverence for living emperors, religion permeates every aspect of Roman existence. There is no secular space in Rome, no separation of church and state, no compartmentalization of sacred and profane. Most striking is the pragmatic approach Romans take to their divine relationships. Their religion lacks the emphasis on faith, doctrine, or personal salvation found in later traditions. Instead, it focuses on maintaining proper relationships with divine powers through correct rituals and offerings. It's less about what you believe and more about what you do. The gods, like humans, respond to proper respect and reciprocate when treated appropriately. As you drift towards sleep, you wonder if your own religious assumptions, shaped by 2,000 years of subsequent history, might seem as strange to Romans as theirs do to you. The certainty that each side would find the other's worldview incomprehensible is perhaps the most profound insight of all. A month into your Roman existence, disaster strikes. You wake one morning with your throat burning, your head pounding, and your body alternating between violent chills and drenching sweats. Rising from your pallet in the tavern storeroom requires heroic effort. When you finally manage to stand, dizziness overwhelms you and you collapse against a shelf of wine amphorae, sending one crashing to the floor. The noise brings the tavern keeper running. One look at your flushed face and trembling limbs tells him everything. "Fever," he pronounces grimly. This first impactful moment, falling ill in a world without modern medicine, reveals the terrifying vulnerability of human existence in ancient Rome. Illness in Rome isn't just uncomfortable, it's potentially catastrophic. No sick leave protects your job. No antibiotics await to defeat infection. No hospital system stands ready to provide care regardless of your ability to pay. Your value lies solely in your ability to work, and with that temporarily gone, your position becomes precarious. The tavern keeper's reaction surprises you. Rather than immediately replacing you or throwing you onto the street, he helps you back to your pallet. "My father died of fever," he explains, placing a cup of watered wine at your bedside. "I'll send for a medicus. Rest now." His kindness isn't merely humanitarian. Good servants are difficult to find and costly to train. A few days nursing you back to health represents a better investment than finding a replacement. Still, his concern seems genuine, particularly when he places a small wooden figure from his household shrine near your bed, a pragmatic blend of medical and spiritual intervention characteristic of Roman healthcare. Later that day, you experience the second impactful moment, the Roman physician's visit and his bizarre treatments. The medicus arrives carrying a leather satchel of implements and medicaments. He's a Greek freedman, as are many physicians in Rome. Medicine represents one of the few intellectual professions where Greeks dominate due to their reputation for superior learning. His examination is surprisingly thorough. He checks your pulse. At the wrist, places a hand on your forehead, examines your tongue and the whites of your eyes, and asks detailed questions about your symptoms, diet, and daily habits. So far, his approach wouldn't seem entirely out of place in a modern doctor's office. Then the treatment begins, and any illusion of modernity shatters. The physician explains that your illness stems from an imbalance of the four humours: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Your symptoms suggest an excess of blood and yellow bile, creating too much heat and moisture in your system. The remedy is obvious to him: bloodletting to restore proper balance. Before you can object, he removes a small bronze case from his satchel and extracts several squirming creatures, leeches. These he applies to your arms, explaining that they'll draw out the excess blood causing your fever. The sensation of their attachment makes your already queasy stomach lurch. Next comes a bitter herbal concoction that tastes like tree bark and vinegar. It contains willow bark, which does contain salicylic acid, similar to aspirin, mixed with various other ingredients of questionable efficacy. Some, like the powdered ruby and deer antler, seem based more on symbolic value than medicinal properties. The physician recommends a strict dietary regimen, avoiding heating foods like red meat and wine in favor of cooling foods like certain fruits and vegetables. This humoral approach to nutrition makes little sense scientifically, but represents the cutting edge of Roman medical theory. His final prescription proves most disturbing: a poultice to be applied to your chest, containing a mixture of herbs, honey, and mouse droppings. This foul-smelling compound is supposed to draw out the fever through your skin. The look of disgust on your face doesn't faze him. He's accustomed to patient resistance and firmly believes in his methods. After the physician departs, leaving detailed instructions with the tavern keeper and collecting a substantial fee, you lie miserable on your pallet, leeches still attached to your arms, the repulsive poultice on your chest, and the bitter medicine turning your stomach. This is medicine at its best in ancient Rome, a disturbing mixture of practical observation, superstition, and treatments often more dangerous than the diseases they aim to cure. The tavern keeper's wife brings a bowl of barley soup and sits with you while you attempt to eat. Her conversation provides insight into the third, impactful moment: folk remedies and superstitions that form the backbone of everyday Roman healthcare. The medicus is good for serious matters, she explains, but for everyday health we have our ways. She shows you the amulet she wears, a small leather pouch containing herbs and an inscribed metal tablet, said to protect against fever and inflammation. Around her neck hangs a fascinum, a phallic-shaped amulet believed to ward off the evil eye and illness it might bring. She shares household remedies passed through generations: honey for coughs, vinegar for cleaning wounds, certain herbal teas for digestive troubles. Some, like applying clean cobwebs to cuts, which can actually have mild antibacterial properties, show practical wisdom. Others, like wearing red coral to prevent bleeding, reflect pure superstition. The line between medicine, magic, and religion blurs completely in Roman healthcare. The same person might pray to Asclepius, god of medicine, consult a physician, wear protective amulets, and use herbal remedies, all without seeing any contradiction. Each approach represents a different front in the battle against illness, in a world where disease remains mysterious and deadly. For 3 days, your fever rages. The tavern keeper allows you to remain in your storeroom, bringing food and medicine, though you notice his visits growing more concerned as your condition fails to improve. You drift in and out of consciousness, experiencing vivid dreams and hallucinations common to high fevers. On the 4th morning, you wake to find your bedding soaked with sweat but your head clearer. The fever has broken, whether this resulted from the physician's treatments, the tavern keeper's wife's herbal teas, the small offerings made to healing deities on your behalf, or simply your body's natural defenses. You'll never know. In Rome, medical cause and effect remain largely mysterious, with recovery attributed to whichever intervention seems most convincing to the patient. The 4th impactful moment comes during your slow recovery, surviving or dying, the thin line, in Roman healthcare. As strength gradually returns, you hear about others struck by the same fever sweeping through the neighborhood. The elderly couple who run the fruit stall at the corner, both dead within days of each other. The blacksmith's young apprentice survived but weakened, with a persistent cough that suggests lung damage. The wealthy merchant from the large house near the Forum recovered completely after treatment from the city's most expensive physician. The pattern reveals the brutal healthcare inequality in Rome. Without modern understanding of disease transmission, germ theory, or effective treatments, illness becomes a lottery where wealth, age, and underlying health determine survival more than medical intervention. The poor die from conditions the wealthy survive, not because treatments differ substantially in their efficacy, but because the wealthy have better baseline health from superior nutrition, less physically demanding occupations, cleaner living conditions, and the luxury of rest during recovery. Your own survival represents good fortune more than good medicine. Had your constitution been slightly weaker, the fever slightly stronger, or the tavern keeper slightly less patient with your incapacitation, the outcome might have been very different. As you resume your duties, still weak but able to work, you notice how casually Romans accept the constant presence of death from disease. In a city of perhaps 1 million inhabitants, disease spreads rapidly through crowded housing, contaminated water, and poor sanitation. Life expectancy at birth hovers around 25 years, with infant mortality claiming nearly 1/3 of children before age 10. Yet alongside this fatalism exists remarkable medical innovation. Roman military hospitals perform successful amputations and even crude brain surgeries with survival rates that won't be matched until the 19th century. Public health initiatives, like aqueducts, sewers, and bath complexes, represent history's first large-scale preventative medicine. Roman pharmacology identifies genuinely effective herbal remedies among its many useless concoctions. This contradiction defines Roman healthcare. Simultaneously, primitive and advanced, superstitious and practical, cruel and compassionate. As you carefully rebuild your strength, aware how close you came to becoming another anonymous fever victim, you understand that in Rome, good health is never taken for granted. It remains a precious, precarious state, dependent on factors largely beyond individual control. a daily reminder of human fragility in a world where medicine offers hope but few guarantees. Your recovery from fever has been slow but steady. After nearly 2 weeks of reduced duties, you've finally returned to full strength. The tavern has become your world, a microcosm of Roman society where you observe the complex social dynamics of the empire through the customers who pass through its doors. One afternoon, as you're cleaning tables after the midday rush, a commotion breaks out near the door. A well-dressed woman enters, followed by 2 female slaves carrying packages. Her appearance causes immediate tension. The tavern keeper hurries over, his expression a mixture of deference and concern. "Domina," he addresses her respectfully. "This establishment perhaps not suitable." She waves away his concerns with an imperious gesture. "My litter bearers need rest and water. I'll wait here while they refresh themselves." Her tone leaves no room for argument, despite the obvious impropriety of her presence. This is no common tavern frequented by both genders. It's a traditional Roman establishment where respectable women simply don't appear. This first impactful moment, encountering the limited legal status of women in Roman society, unfolds as you watch the reactions around you. Male patrons stare openly, some making quiet comments behind their hands. Others deliberately look away, as though her presence contaminates the space. The tavern keeper reluctantly shows her to a corner table, providing cups of watered wine. For her and her attendants, you're assigned to serve her table, perhaps because, as the lowest-ranking staff member, you're the most expendable should this situation lead to scandal. As you approach with a pitcher of water, you notice details about her that speak volumes about her status. Her stola, the traditional garment of a Roman matron, is made of fine dyed wool with subtle embroidery at the borders. Her jewelry is elegant, but not ostentatious. Most tellingly, she wears the hairstyle of a married woman, with her hair parted and pinned up beneath a partial head covering. "Your establishment has a reputation for decent wine," she addresses you directly. "Is it deserved?" You stammer a response, caught off guard by her direct manner. In your time here, you've noticed that many Roman men speak about women rather than to them even when they're present. This woman clearly expects direct address. The tavern keeper intervenes, recommending a particular wine from his better stock. As he speaks with her, you observe their interaction, noting the complex dance of status and gender. He addresses her with extreme respect, acknowledging her obvious wealth and social position. Yet there's an underlying current of discomfort, a sense that no matter how high her status, her gender places her in an ambiguous position in this male space. Later, after she departs with her refreshed attendants, the tavern erupts in gossip. You learn she's Livia Metella, widow of a wealthy merchant, and now the manager of his considerable business interests. Her presence in the tavern wasn't mere eccentricity, but a deliberate business decision. She's considering purchasing a large wine order for an upcoming household celebration and wanted to assess the quality personally. "Shouldn't be allowed," grumbles an older patron. "Women managing businesses appearing in public establishments. In my father's time, they stayed behind the curtain where they belonged." "Times change," counters a younger man. "My sister manages our family's textile workshop better than any man could, knows the business inside and out." This conversation reveals the complex and contradictory position of women in Roman society. Legally restricted, but often practically influential, formally subordinate, but sometimes considerably powerful, women in Rome occupy a space that defies simple categorization. The second impactful moment comes a few days later when you're sent to deliver a wine order to a wealthy household, preparing for a wedding celebration. There, You witness firsthand the reality of marriage, dowry, and family politics for Roman women. The household buzzes with activity. Slaves decorate the atrium with flowers and greenery. Cooks prepare elaborate dishes in the kitchen. In the central courtyard, the bride, a girl who appears no older than 14, is being instructed by older women on her duties for the ceremony. As you deliver the wine amphorae to the household steward, you overhear a tense conversation between the bride's father and the groom's representative, finalizing details of the dowry agreement. The transaction feels more commercial than romantic, property being transferred, financial obligations outlined, family alliances strengthened. The bride herself seems barely considered in these arrangements, except as the vessel through which these connections will be formalized. The girl brings 50,000 sesterces, the villa at Baiae, and the income from the Spanish olive groves, states the father. And should the marriage end without male issue, counters the groom's representative. The villa reverts to her family, but she retains the income for her lifetime, comes the careful response. You realize that while the young bride has no say in her marriage partner, the dowry represents a form of financial protection. In a society where divorce is relatively easy, particularly for men, a substantial dowry provides leverage and security for a woman who might otherwise be completely vulnerable. Later, as you pass the women's quarters on your way out, you glimpse female relatives adorning the bride with symbolic items, a flame-colored veil representing her transition to womanhood, a belt tied with a special knot that only her husband will untie, a spindle and wool symbolizing her domestic duties. Though young by modern standards, this girl is transferring from the authority of her father, patria potestas, to the authority of her husband, expected to begin bearing children almost immediately in a society where a woman's primary value lies in her reproductive capacity. The third impactful moment in your education about Roman women occurs unexpectedly during a delivery to an insula in a relatively affluent neighborhood. The recipient is Cornelia, a widow who runs a successful import business specializing in luxury textiles from the eastern provinces. Her apartment occupies an entire floor, a significant living space by urban Roman standards. Here you discover the surprising freedoms of certain Roman women, particularly those in the matron category. Widows, divorced women, or women who have borne 3 children, earning the legal privilege of the ius trium liberorum, which frees them from requiring a male guardian for legal transactions. Cornelia's home reveals a lifestyle that challenges stereotypical views of Roman women as perpetually secluded and subordinate. Business documents spread across a table indicate her direct management of significant commercial enterprises. A letter dictated to a secretary contains instructions to agents in Alexandria regarding silk shipments. Unlike the theoretical legal restrictions that should limit her activities, Cornelia clearly operates with considerable independence. Most women's restrictions exist more on papyrus than in practice, she explains, when she notices your poorly concealed surprise at her autonomous operation. The law says I should have a male guardian for contracts, but what judge would invalidate a profitable trading arrangement simply because I negotiated it myself? Rome values pragmatism above rigid principles. You learn that wealth and social class create significant differences in women's daily experiences. Elite women might live highly restricted lives in theory, but exercise considerable indirect power through family connections. Middle-class women like Cornelia often enjoy more practical freedom, particularly in commerce. The poorest women experience both the harshest conditions and, ironically, the most freedom of movement, as economic necessity forces them into public-facing work as market vendors, laundresses, and craftswomen. The fourth impactful moment reveals motherhood and the pressure to produce heirs in Roman society. During your daily work at the tavern, you've become familiar with a regular customer, a nervous-looking man in his 30s who holds a minor administrative position. Today, he arrives with friends, ordering the best wine and distributing honey. Cakes to everyone present. "My wife has delivered a son," he announces proudly. The tavern erupts in congratulations, men slapping him on the back and offering toasts to his good fortune. The celebration feels disproportionate until you understand what this birth represents in Roman society. A male heir ensures continuity of the family line, the proper performance of ancestral rites, inheritance of property, and fulfillment of the most fundamental duty of a Roman marriage. For the wife, delivering a healthy son significantly strengthens her position in her husband's household. 3 miscarriages and 2 daughters before this boy, confides the new father to his companions, his relief palpable. The wife's family was beginning to suggest dissolution of the marriage. This casual comment reveals the tremendous pressure on Roman women to produce male children. Failure to do so could result in divorce, relegation to a marginal position within the household, or being forced to accept her husband taking a concubine to provide the needed heir. In the following days, you notice subtle differences in how Romans discuss women depending on their maternal status. Women with children, particularly sons, receive a level of respect and authority denied to childless women. The ultimate compliment for a woman, univira, or one-man woman, describes a woman married only once who has successfully produced heirs for her husband's lineage. Through these experiences and countless smaller observations, you piece together an understanding of women's position in Roman society, legally restricted yet often practically influential, valued primarily for reproduction, yet sometimes achieving remarkable independence, simultaneously elevated as matron, and restricted as perpetual dependents. The contradictions persist because Roman society values tradition and stability above consistency. The legal framework inherited from more restrictive eras remains officially unchanged, while practical adaptations allow for the functioning of a complex, evolving society. The result is a system where exceptional women can achieve significant autonomy despite theoretical constraints, while the average woman remains defined primarily by her relationship to men as daughter, wife, and mother. As you finish your deliveries and return to the tavern, you reflect that understanding Roman women requires seeing beyond both romantic idealization and simplistic victimization narratives. Their reality, like women throughout history, involves navigating sophisticated systems of constraint and opportunity, finding agency within limitation, and sometimes transcending barriers through wealth, wit, or fortunate circumstances. The women of Rome, though obscured by historical records written almost exclusively by men, were neither entirely oppressed nor surprisingly liberated, but participants in a social system that simultaneously restricted and relied upon them, a contradiction that reveals much about Rome itself. 3 months into your life in ancient Rome, death makes its presence known in a way impossible to ignore. Dawn breaks with the discordant wailing of professional mourners echoing through the streets, a sound distinctively different from the usual morning clamor of commerce and conversation. You're sweeping the tavern entrance when the procession appears at the end of the street, moving slowly toward you. This first impactful moment, encountering death on the streets, unfolds as the funeral procession passes directly before the tavern. Leading the way are musicians playing mournful tunes on flutes, followed by professional female mourners tearing at their clothes and hair in ritualized displays of grief. Their dramatic performance seems theatrical to your modern sensibilities, but to Romans, proper mourning requires visible, vocal expressions of loss. Behind the musicians and mourners come actors wearing the ancestor masks, imagines, of the deceased's family. These wax masks, kept in special cabinets in wealthy homes, represent distinguished ancestors and are worn by men of similar build to the deceased relatives. This practice literally brings the family's dead to participate in the ceremony, a vivid demonstration of Rome's emphasis on ancestry and lineage. The tavern keeper steps outside to watch, instructing you to do the same. "Show proper respect," he murmurs. "That's Titus Aemilius Paulus, served as aedile 10 years ago, good man who kept order in the markets." The deceased himself follows, carried on an open bier so that all may see him. His body has been washed, anointed with oils and spices to temporarily preserve it, and dressed in his finest toga. His skin appears waxy, his expression carefully composed by the polinctores, specialists who prepare bodies for funeral display. Unlike modern practices that hide death, Romans confront mortality directly, with the deceased visible to all. Behind the bier walk family members, first adult men, then women and children. Their expressions of grief follow carefully prescribed customs. Men display dignified restraint while women are permitted, even expected, to show more emotional distress. Young children appear confused by the proceedings, their participation part of their education in proper Roman death rituals. The procession heads toward the forum, where important citizens receive funeral orations before being cremated outside the city walls. As it passes, conversations pause and people make gestures to ward off pollution from death, touching iron amulets or making subtle signs with their fingers. The funeral procession will return after the eulogy, then pass through the city gates for cremation, explains the tavern keeper. No bodies burned within the city, against both law and religion. This public procession reveals how death in Rome exists simultaneously as personal loss, public spectacle, and civic event. A prominent citizen's death becomes an opportunity to reinforce social connections, display family prestige, and remind the living of ancestral values. Even in grief, Romans perform their social roles with careful attention to tradition and propriety. Later that same month, you experience the second impactful moment when a customer at the tavern, an elderly man who came daily for a cup of watered wine, fails to appear for several days. When you ask about his absence, you learn he has died, with his funeral already completed. The contrast between his modest ceremony and the elaborate procession you witnessed earlier provides insight into the elaborate Roman funeral procession and its class dimensions. No procession through the Forum for old Marcellus, explains a regular customer. No ancestral masks or professional mourners, just family carrying him to the necropolis at night, a simple cremation and ashes in a clay pot rather than a marble urn. You learn that Roman funerals, like everything else in their society, reflect strict social hierarchy. The elaborate public ceremony you witnessed was exclusive to the wealthy and socially prominent. Most Romans receive far simpler treatment: night, burials with minimal ceremony, cremation on communal pyres rather than individual ones, and modest containers for their remains. The poorest Romans face even grimmer prospects. Those who cannot afford cremation might be buried in common pits, or puticuli, mass graves outside the city walls where bodies decompose without the dignified transformation of fire. Slaves receive minimal funerary treatment unless their masters choose to provide it. Criminals and suicides may be denied proper burial entirely, their bodies thrown into the Tiber, a fate Romans consider horrifying, as it prevents proper transition to the afterlife. The third impactful moment in your education about Roman death occurs when you're sent to deliver wine to a household observing the Novendialis, the 9-day mourning period following a family member's cremation. This experience reveals Roman burial customs and the fear of improper burial that haunts even the most pragmatic citizens. the household exists in a state of ritual suspension. Mirrors are covered, fires extinguished and relit, and normal activities paused. Family members wear dark clothing and avoid public appearances. The central atrium contains an altar with the funerary urn, in this case, a beautifully carved marble container holding the cremated remains of the family's patriarch. As you deliver the wine intended for the final memorial feast, you observe preparations for the Cena Novendialis that will mark the end of formal mourning. This meal brings together family and friends to honor the deceased, share memories, and officially return to normal life, though certain family members, particularly widows, may continue mourning longer. The daughter of the house supervises these preparations, explaining to a younger relative, "After today's feast, Father's urn will be placed in the family columbarium. We'll visit on his birthday and during parentalia to make offerings." This conversation reveals the ongoing relationship Romans maintain with their dead. The columbarium, a structure with niches resembling a dovecote, holds family urns, creating a permanent resting place that descendants visit regularly. During festivals like Parentalia and Lemuria, Romans make offerings to ancestral spirits, maintaining connections between living and dead family members. You notice the daughter wears a protective amulet, commonly used during mourning when Romans believe the boundary between living and dead becomes dangerously permeable. Despite their matter-of-fact approach to death, Romans fear improper burial or neglected spirits might lead to haunting or curse. Their elaborate funeral practices serve not just to honor the dead, but to ensure they remain properly separated from the living. The fourth impactful moment comes when you learn about the administrative aftermath of death, the practical concerns that follow even the most ceremonial farewell. A regular customer at the tavern works as a scribe, specializing in wills and inheritance documents, and his shop nearby has been unusually busy following a recent fever outbreak in the city. "Death is Rome's busiest industry," he comments during an evening drink at the tavern. The legal proceedings often take longer than dying itself. You learn that Roman inheritance law is exceptionally complex. Wills, testamenta, must follow strict formulas and be witnessed by specific numbers of citizens to be valid. The preference for male heirs creates complicated arrangements when no sons survive. Burial clubs, collegia funeratitia, collect regular fees from members to ensure proper funeral services for those who cannot afford elaborate arrangements individually. Most striking is how death reshapes Roman households. When a pater familias, male head of household, dies, adult sons become independent legal entities, while unmarried daughters and younger children require new guardians. Widows might return to their birth families, remain with their children, or remarry, depending on their age, status, and financial circumstances. Slaves mentioned in wills might be freed or transferred to new owners. A single death can reconfigure dozens of lives. As you walk back to the tavern after delivering funeral wine, you notice how omnipresent death remains in the Roman cityscape. Tombs line the roads leading into the city, their inscriptions directly addressing passers-by. "Stop, traveler, and read about me." Children play casually among funerary monuments. Vendors sell food and flowers to those visiting family remains. Romans live with death as a visible, integrated part of their urban landscape and social experience. They acknowledge mortality directly through public ceremonies, ancestor veneration, and roadside monuments. Their approach reveals neither modern denial nor morbid obsession, but a practical accommodation to life's inevitable conclusion. One final example of Roman pragmatism in the face of universal human experience. 6 months have passed since your unexpected arrival in ancient Rome. What began as disorienting shock has evolved into a strange familiarity. You've adapted to the rhythms of Roman life, the early mornings, the public baths, the religious observances marking each day. Your Latin has improved considerably, your body has toughened from physical labor, and your understanding of Roman society has deepened beyond anything books could provide. Yet throughout your adaptation to this ancient world, one question has lingered in your mind. What do Romans believe happens after death? You've witnessed their funeral practices, observed their reverence for ancestors, and noticed their careful attention to proper burial, but these external rituals reveal only part of their understanding of what lies beyond mortal existence. Your opportunity to explore this final aspect of Roman life comes unexpectedly during the February festival of Parentalia, a 9-day period when Romans honor their deceased family members. The tavern closes early one afternoon, allowing you to accompany the tavern keeper to the necropolis outside the city walls where his parents and grandparents are interred. The first impactful moment of your journey into Roman afterlife beliefs occurs as you walk along the Via Appia, where elaborate tombs line the road leading from the city. The tavern keeper carries a simple basket containing offerings, bread, salt, wine, and violets, the flowers traditionally associated with death. As you pass the grand mausoleums of wealthy families and the more modest monuments of the middle class, you notice how many tomb inscriptions directly address the living. I was once what you are now, you will be what I am now. The dead want to be remembered, explains the tavern keeper, noticing your interest in the inscriptions. That's why tombs face the road, to catch the attention of travelers. A Roman only truly dies when no one speaks his name anymore. This reveals the first layer of Roman afterlife belief, the continuation of identity through memory. The elaborate gate funerals, the ancestor masks displayed in homes, the regular commemorative offerings, all serve to maintain the deceased's presence in the world of the living. This social immortality, surviving in the memories and actions of descendants, represents one form of afterlife that even the most skeptical Romans acknowledge. You reach a modest family columbarium, a small structure with niches containing urns of the tavern keeper's ancestors. He carefully cleans away dust and leaves, then arranges his offerings before the urns while murmuring traditional prayers. The ritual feels simultaneously religious and pragmatic, honoring both divine powers and family connections. Do you believe they can hear you? You ask carefully, conscious of intruding on a private moment. His response reveals the second impactful moment, beliefs about the underworld. Their shades dwell in the underworld, in Pluto's realm. But during Parentalia, the boundary thins. They can cross over briefly to receive offerings and visit family. As he describes it, the Roman underworld emerges as a complex realm with distinct regions for different categories of dead. Most ordinary souls dwell in a shadowy existence, neither particularly tormented nor blessed. Heroes and the exceptionally virtuous might reach the Elysian fields, a place of peace and mild pleasure. The wicked face punishment in Tartarus. Certain exceptional mortals, like Romulus, the city's founder, might be elevated to divine status, becoming gods rather than mere shades. Most people believe something like this, he admits, but nobody knows for certain. The philosophers debate, the priests have their doctrines, and ordinary people like me just follow the traditions. Better safe than sorry when it comes to the dead. This pragmatic uncertainty characterizes much of Roman religious belief. Unlike faiths with detailed doctrinal requirements, Roman religion emphasizes correct practice over correct belief. Performing appropriate rituals matters more than personal conviction about metaphysical questions. Many educated Romans, simultaneously, maintain traditional practices while privately holding more philosophical or skeptical views. Walking back toward the city as evening approaches, the tavern keeper takes a different route, deliberately avoiding certain older, neglected tombs. This behavior introduces the third impactful moment: memorial practices and the fear of restless spirits. Romans believed that souls without proper burial or ongoing commemoration may become restless, potentially harmful, lemurs or larvae that trouble the living. Some dead are best left undisturbed, he explains, quickening his pace past a crumbling monument, especially those without family to maintain proper rites. The festivals of Parentalia, for honoring family dead, and Lemuria, for appeasing potentially hostile spirits, form bookends of Roman interaction with the afterlife. Between them lies a sophisticated system for maintaining appropriate boundaries between living and dead, boundaries that require regular maintenance through ritual and remembrance. A few weeks later, during a rare day off, you visit a small temple dedicated to Isis, one of several Eastern cults gaining popularity in Rome. Unlike traditional Roman religion with its transactional relationship with deities and vague afterlife, these mystery cults offer more emotional spiritual experiences and promises of personal salvation. This represents the fourth impactful moment, the evolving nature of Roman afterlife beliefs as the empire absorbs influences from conquered territories. Inside the temple, a priestess explains to a small group of potential initiates, Isis conquered death itself. Through her mysteries, the faithful may achieve blessed immortality. Similar promises come from the cults of Mithras, popular among soldiers, Cybele, whose rites include blood sacrifice, and various other Eastern deities offering more personal religious experiences than traditional Roman practices. These mystery religions appeal particularly to those seeking greater certainty about the afterlife or more emotional connection to divine powers. While traditional Roman religion serves civic and family functions effectively, it provides limited comfort regarding personal immortality. The growing popularity of these alternative faiths reveals a spiritual hunger that native Roman traditions don't fully satisfy. As months become years, your understanding of Roman attitudes toward death and afterlife deepens. You recognize that Rome, like many societies, maintains multiple, sometimes contradictory beliefs simultaneously. The educated elite might discuss philosophical concepts of the soul from Greek traditions while still observing ancestral rites. Ordinary citizens might combine traditional practices with newer mystery religions that promise personal salvation. Soldiers might worship Mithras while still making offerings to their family's traditional deities. This multiplicity reflects Rome's pragmatic approach to most aspects of life and death. Rather than demanding doctrinal consistency, Roman culture accommodates useful practices regardless of their origin. The result is a rich tapestry of beliefs about what happens after death, continued existence through family memory, shade-like persistence in the underworld, potential divine elevation for the extraordinary, or spiritual transformation through mystery religions. What unites these varied beliefs is emphasis on maintaining proper relationships between living and dead, human and divine, individual and community. The rituals marking death and commemorating ancestors serve not just metaphysical purposes, but social ones, reinforcing family bonds and community values across generations. As you complete your daily tasks at the tavern, now promoted to serving customers directly rather than washing dishes in the back, you find unexpected comfort in this Roman approach to mortality. Their clear-eyed acknowledgement of death's inevitability, combined with rich traditions for maintaining connections with those who have passed, offers a model that neither denies the reality of loss nor abandons hope for continuity. In your time-displaced existence, you've come to appreciate how Romans faced the fundamental human questions with characteristic practicality. Their answers may not satisfy modern scientific or religious perspectives, but they created a functional system for confronting mortality's greatest challenges: how to honor the dead, comfort the living, and find meaning in the brief span between birth and death. The Roman approach to afterlife, like their approach to everything from engineering to governance, reveals their defining quality: the ability to build enduring structures, physical and cultural, that acknowledge harsh realities, while creating space for human dignity and connection. This, perhaps, explains why their civilization's influence outlasted its political existence, creating an afterlife for Rome itself that continues into your own time and beyond. You've walked the streets of ancient Rome. You've tasted their bread, used their toilets, bathed in their baths, and prayed to their gods. You've seen how they lived, worked, loved, and died. And now, as our journey through time comes to an end, one truth emerges with crystal clarity: you wouldn't last a week in the Roman Empire. Not because you lack intelligence or adaptability, but because we modern humans have been shaped by a world of comfort, privacy, and individual rights that would be utterly foreign to Roman sensibilities. The daily realities you've experienced would break most of us within days. The physical demands alone would devastate your modern body. The constant walking on hard stone streets, the manual labor without ergonomic tools, the lack of pain medication, stronger than willow bark, the persistent intestinal parasites from contaminated food and water. Your body would surrender long before your mind. The psychological shock might prove even more unbearable. The casual cruelty of a slave-based society, the public executions as entertainment, the strict hierarchies determining your worth from birth, the constant proximity to death without modern medicine's interventions. These realities would shatter our modern expectations of human dignity and personal agency. Even if you somehow adapted to these harsh physical and psychological conditions, the cultural barriers would likely prove insurmountable. Without years of education in proper Roman behavior, you would constantly mark yourself as an outsider through subtle mistakes in etiquette, religious observance, or social interaction. In a society deeply suspicious of foreigners, such mistakes could prove fatal. Yet the Romans endured. Not just endured, but thrived, building a civilization whose legal codes, architectural principles, engineering feats, and cultural legacy continue to shape our world today. They created beauty amid hardship, established order amid chaos, and found meaning in a world without modern comforts or protections. Perhaps that's the most humbling lesson of all. The Romans weren't superhuman. They were people like us, but shaped by different circumstances, different values, different necessities. Their world seems harsh to us because we've forgotten what humans can endure when they know no alternative. You wouldn't last a week in the Roman Empire, but they lasted for centuries, and in learning how they lived, perhaps we've gained not just historical knowledge, but a deeper appreciation for both human adaptability and the long journey that brought us from their world to ours, a journey we take for granted at our peril. Sleep well, knowing you live in your time, not theirs. But remember them. That's all any Roman ever truly wanted, to be remembered. Memento mori. Remember that you are mortal. Memento vivere. Remember to live.